You're about to hear a story that no amount of skepticism can truly explain. A story that still haunts the town of Fairhaven, Pennsylvania, though many pretend it never happened. In March 2021, a woman named Claire Holloway vanished after months of living alone in her childhood home. When investigators finally forced the doors open, they found something they couldn't rationalize. A dining room table perfectly set for 3, plates still warm, 2 chairs pulled out, and a porcelain marionette seated in the third, its painted eyes staring straight ahead as if it had been waiting. Claire Holloway was 32 when she moved back into the old colonial house on Pinemont Street. Her mother had passed away from cancer just 6 months before. Her younger sister, Emily, had died in a car crash when they were teenagers. Claire had always blamed herself for that night, and she never forgave her father for abandoning them soon after, leaving behind a trail of unpaid bills and shattered trust. The house had been empty for years, but Claire couldn't bring herself to sell it. She convinced herself that coming back would bring closure, that facing the ghosts of her past would finally set her free. She was wrong. 3 weeks after moving in, Claire began sorting through boxes in the attic. Among yellowed newspapers and her mother's wedding dress, she found an old wooden crate nailed shut. Her hands trembled as she pried the lid loose. Inside lay a marionette, carved with unsettling detail. Its porcelain face wore a delicate smile. Its glass eyes gleamed blue, and its brown hair was real, too real. Wrapped around its tiny wrist was a bracelet, the same bracelet her sister Emily had worn when she died. Claire felt her stomach drop. She didn't remember this puppet from her childhood. She didn't remember her mother ever owning it. But in her grief-stricken mind, it felt like a sign, a way to feel close to Emily again. That night, she set the marionette in her sister's old chair at the dining table. At first, it was harmless, a chair pulled away from the table, a light left on in the hallway, a soft tapping on her bedroom door after midnight. She told herself it was stress, or maybe sleepwalking, but then she started to hear the music, a lullaby drifting up from the living room, the same lullaby her mother used to sing when Claire and Emily were small. One night, she crept downstairs to find the marionette perched on the mantel, head tilted toward the old record player, though it hadn't worked in years. Its painted smile seemed wider than before. Claire began recording everything. She set up cameras in each room. When she reviewed the footage, she found hours of static, until, at 2:47 a.m., the image cleared. The marionette was standing on the dining table, both arms raised, as if reaching for something only it could see. In that moment, she heard her sister's voice, faint but unmistakable. "Why did you leave me?" Her heart slammed against her ribs. She tried to tell herself it was grief, but in the pit of her stomach, she knew something was horribly wrong. By the 4th week, Claire stopped leaving the house. She stopped answering calls. Neighbors said they saw her standing in the front window at all hours, holding the marionette in her arms. On March 12th, she called her childhood friend, Marcus, in the middle of the night. Her voice was brittle, distant. "Marcus, I know how this sounds, but I think Emily is here with me. I think she wants me to stay." Marcus begged her to leave to get help. She whispered, "It's too late for that. I can't leave her alone again." And then she hung up. The next morning, Claire tried to convince herself it had all been a nightmare. But when she came downstairs, she found something waiting on the dining table, a small leather journal. She didn't remember bringing it out. She didn't even recognize it at first, until she opened the cover. Written on the first page, in her mother's careful script, were the words, "For Emily, so you never forget how much you were loved." Her hands trembled as she turned the pages. Each one was filled with lullabies, childhood memories, pressed flowers. And on the very last page, there was a note. It looked rushed, almost frantic. "She's in the doll. I couldn't let her be alone. Forgive me." That night, Claire placed her phone camera on the mantel, pointed straight at the marionette. She needed to know the truth. She lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, every muscle locked with dread. Somewhere in the darkness, she heard the faint creak of a wooden joint. The next morning, she reviewed the footage. For hours, the marionette didn't move. But at exactly 3:07 a.m., its head lifted. Then, in one slow motion, it turned to face the camera. Its glass eyes glimmered, and its mouth, porcelain, painted, opened. No sound came out, but Claire's chest tightened as she watched. She could almost imagine a silent scream pouring through the screen. She called Marcus again, her voice raw. "Marcus, I have proof. You need to see this." He promised to come the next day, but as soon as she hung up, she felt it, a shift in the air, as if the house itself were listening. When she turned around, the marionette was no longer on the mantel. Her throat closed. She scanned the room, heart hammering, and finally saw it sitting in her sister's old chair at the table, waiting. Claire couldn't keep pretending. She stepped toward the doll, hands shaking. "I don't know what you are," she whispered. "If you're really her, if you're Emily, please just let me go." She waited, but nothing happened. No movement, no voice, until the old record player began to spin. A lullaby crackled through the static, filling the room with the same tune their mother used to sing. Claire collapsed to her knees, covering her ears. Tears streamed down her face. The music grew louder, warped, as if someone were singing through broken glass. She crawled toward the marionette and ripped the bracelet from its wrist. In that instant, the music stopped. When Marcus arrived the next morning, the house was silent. He called her name over and over, but she didn't answer. On the dining table, he found the journal and the bracelet, set neatly beside Claire's phone. The last video on the phone was only 12 seconds long. Claire sat in the dark, the marionette in her lap. Her eyes were glassy, unfocused. In a voice so soft it barely carried, she whispered, "Sometimes love isn't enough to keep the dead away." Then the screen went black. Marcus couldn't sleep after leaving the house. He kept replaying Claire's voice in his head, the way she sounded, like she'd already given up. Just after midnight, he decided to call her one more time. The phone rang 6 times. On the 7th, the line clicked open. For a moment, he thought no one was there, but then, very faintly, he heard breathing. "Claire," he whispered, "please, if you can hear me, pick up." There was no reply, only the soft, hollow sound of air moving through the receiver, and then a child's voice, distant and warped, whispered, "She's staying with me." The call ended. Marcus called the police. By dawn, 2 patrol cars were parked outside the Holloway house. The officers pounded on the front door, but no one answered. They forced it open. Inside, the air was ice cold. The kitchen lights were on, casting long shadows over the counters. In the living room, the record player was spinning. But there was no record on the turntable. It was moving on its own, a single note humming endlessly from the speaker. They found the dining room table set for 3. 2 chairs pulled out, 1 pushed in. On the table sat the marionette, hands folded in its lap, its painted face calm. When they climbed the stairs, they found Claire's bedroom door shut. One officer knocked, announcing himself. No response. He turned the knob slowly. The room was empty, except for a single white sheet spread neatly across the bed. On the pillow lay Claire's necklace, an old silver locket she'd worn every day. Inside was a tiny photograph of her and Emily, taken the summer before the accident. Both girls were laughing, arms around each other. Pinned beneath the locket was a note written in Claire's handwriting. I couldn't leave her alone. Forgive me. They searched the house top to bottom. No sign of Claire. No footprints in the yard. No forced entry. Nothing. Neighbors said they hadn't seen her leave. Security cameras at the end of the street showed no cars pulling away that night. The only thing anyone could agree on was this: Claire Holloway had simply disappeared. 2 days later, Marcus returned with one of the officers to collect Claire's belongings. They found her phone in the kitchen cabinet, battery nearly dead. There was one final video saved at 3:21 a.m. In the dim glow of the camera, Claire sat on the floor, the marionette propped against her shoulder. Her voice was hoarse, almost gentle. If anyone sees this, I want you to know I tried. I tried to be strong. She glanced down, stroking the doll's hair. But love isn't always enough. Sometimes the past won't let go. The video ended with her looking directly into the lens. For a split second, another face seemed to appear behind her shoulder, smaller, blurred, with the same blue eyes as the marionette. Then darkness. In the weeks that followed, Fairhaven police conducted dozens of interviews. Neighbors, friends, old teachers, anyone who might explain what had happened in that house. Experts were called to analyze the video recordings. Technicians confirmed there were no signs of tampering. The footage was genuine. The marionette was sent to a forensic lab. They examined the hair, the paint, the tiny porcelain teeth hidden behind its painted smile. What they discovered made national headlines. The hair was real, human hair, and the DNA matched Emily Holloway. For months, people argued over the case. Some believed Claire had suffered a psychotic break, driven by guilt and grief. Others insisted the house itself was cursed, that something had been waiting there for her to return. A few even said they'd seen lights flickering in the Holloway house late at night, that they'd heard a lullaby drifting through the walls, sung in two voices. Eventually, the house was boarded up, but to this day, no one has been able to explain what happened to Claire Holloway, or why, in the last video, she looked almost relieved. If you drive past 128 Pinemont Street now, you'll see the boards nailed over the windows, the grass growing tall around the steps. Sometimes people say they glimpse a woman standing behind the curtains, holding something in her arms, a small, pale figure with blue glass eyes. And if you listen very carefully, you might hear a soft lullaby carried on the wind. Before you dismiss this as just another ghost story, ask yourself, what would you do if you lost everyone you loved? What would you give to have them back, even for a moment? Would you recognize the difference between love and obsession, between memory and madness? Claire Holloway didn't set out to disappear. She was only trying to fill a space in her heart that nothing else could reach. In the end, that emptiness swallowed her whole. The lesson here isn't about a haunted house. It isn't about a cursed doll or a sister's ghost. It's about the truth none of us want to face. Grief is patient. It waits in the quiet corners of your mind, whispering that maybe, just maybe, you could turn back time, but you can't. No amount of wishing or guilt or love will change what's already happened. All you can do is learn to live with the scars and keep moving forward, because if you don't, you might find yourself sitting in the dark, talking to something that was never really there. And maybe, just maybe, you won't be able to tell the difference anymore.